fields, clear it of debris, recreate the watershed areas that they need. These are urgent measures, and they are not going to be tolerating any sort of political gamesmanship.
If I might just add, I was insurance commissioner in California twice in the early 90s and then again in 2003 to 2008 or 7. And during that period of time, we had many emergencies in California. We had fires, we had earthquakes, and always we could count on the federal government immediately providing assistance. Sometimes vast sums, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars made immediately available to rebuild. And it was never a question of having to take money away from an existing program so that that aid can be brought to California. When the hurricane went through New Orleans, nobody said, well, we're going to take care of New Orleans and we're going to cut education or we're going to cut research. They simply put the money together during the Republican and the Bush period to rebuild New Orleans, and that was a multi-billion-dollar project. Now, here we are with these disasters in the Northeast, and our Republican colleagues are demanding an offset. That is, in order to provide money to rebuild the Northeast, we're going to have to cut out the research for advanced auto technology. This is the future of the American auto industry. This is how to build a better electric motor for a car, a better battery, so that we can make those things in America rather than importing them from China or Korea or Japan. The opportunity for America's auto industry to advance with more fuel-efficient cars, all of that will be pushed aside for the first time in anybody's memory here. And some people have been here 50 years. Never before was an offset required, particularly one that would harm the future of the American automobile industry. So we're going, this doesn't make any sense. Let the compassion and the generosity of America express itself as it has done so many, many times. And simply, okay, we're going to appropriate the money. We'll dig deeper. We'll appropriate the money. We'll rebuild. And in rebuilding, much of it will be made in America.
You know, and I think, if I might, Representative Garamendi, that's where I can acknowledge that my district, regardless of political persuasion, regardless of philosophy, people have been impacted by those statements. They're just trying to process that sort of thinking that would just call to a grinding halt any response that is going to be sufficient simply because it's ruled by some sort of new restrictive qualities. Well, these are people in pain. These are people who are hurting through no fault of their own. They've been impacted by the forces of Mother Nature, and we have seen it, as you have rightfully said, from coast to coast. There have been tragedies out there and disasters and challenges galore through the ages of our history. And we have always responded in that American pioneer sort of way, to be there, roll in the assistance, and take care of it. When one amongst us hurt, we feel everyone's pain. So this is really tragic, and it then challenges our bigger picture here. If we can't be responsive in moments like that, how do you convince some in the House that the urgency to invest in an innovation economy, to invest in a global race on clean energy and innovation, how do you encourage them to understand the urgency of that moment? Because if we're just living for the moment and not looking forward, if we don't have the vision, as is suggested, we shall perish, that is just what we need right now. We won the global race on space because with passionate resolve, we determined that we were going to land the person on the moon before any other nation. And we did it. And we unleashed untold levels of technology that impacted every sector of the economy and every dynamic that defines our quality of life. From healthcare to communications to energy generation to education and beyond. All of that was impacted by the pioneer spirit of the global race on space. We're at that same sort of defining moment. Are we going to shine? Is this going to be a shining moment for America? Are we going to allow the challenge to pass us by? Is that American in spirit? I would suggest not. And the moment today requires the sort of belief in our nation's ability and the leadership that should be expressed in the halls of government here in Washington is silenced by that sort of thinking. And so we must, we need to go forward with the soundness of investment in an innovation economy. When we talk about growing jobs and investing in the American worker, think of it, the linchpin to energy independence, battery manufacturing, advanced battery manufacturing. I see it happening in my district, but it started with R&D. It starts with an investment of ideas and moving them along and building the prototype. You know, you mentioned earlier that my district is the host, was the host territory to the Industrial Revolution. That didn't just happen. There were people with boldness that said, let's create a port called New York City and let it connect the great ocean to the Great Lakes. And because of my location, my geography, upstate New York became that link to a great ocean to the Great Lakes. And it inspired the birth of a necklace of communities called mill towns that then rose to be the epicenters of invention and innovation. That pioneer spirit is alive today in my state, in your state, in the 48 other states. We should be proud of that. We should nurture it. We should make certain that it speaks forcefully to job creation, and that's the plan of the President's American Job Act, and it's the vision of Make It in America that you and I so often speak to during these special orders on the House floor.
We can. Yes, we can. We can rebuild America. We really can do it. You gave a wonderful example of the way in which the great industrial revolution in this country took place. Government doing its piece and the private sector doing that piece. Government setting the stage with infrastructure, and then the private sector coming along, building the mill towns, building the factories, and the government aiding in the research all along the way. There's a very interesting story about the telegraph. Would not have happened had not that idea been brought to the Congress, and then the Congress funding the initial implementation of the telegraph. So we've seen over the history of America the role of government, and the President has laid out in the American Jobs Act a very powerful message about the role of government together with the free enterprise entrepreneurial system, building once again the America that we want. I want to take this, we've got maybe another 15 minutes I think here, and I want to take this to another part of what the President talked about yesterday. There is two Americas. We are two very different Americas. There is the very wealthy America, and then there is the rest of America. I put this up because I was listening as I was traveling to one of my meetings in the district over the weekend to a radio talk show. It was KGO Radio in San Francisco, and they had a talk show in support of food banks. They were taking the entire day and assisting and raising money. Now, this is one of the most listened to stations on the entire West Coast. They go from Vancouver all the way down to San Diego with their radio signal. And it was a whole day dedicated to food banks and raising money for food banks. The storyline was very simple. Food banks are being inundated by men and women that can no longer buy food. They are unemployed. They're simply to a point where they cannot any longer. And the stories were heart-wrenching. Men and women, families men and women that had worked their entire life, that had always been able to come home with food and a paycheck and be able to pay the rent or pay the mortgage, but had lost their job, and they didn't know what to do. And they were embarrassed to go to the food bank. They thought it was begging. That's not the case. But nonetheless, the stories tore me apart and caused me to come back and find out about child poverty. Child poverty in this nation. The richest nation in the world. No other nation, no matter what you think of China, no matter what you think about India and how they have grown, or any part of the European Union, No other nation in the world has the wealth of America. And no other industrialized country in the world has the same extraordinary child poverty. What are we? What are we in America if we don't care for our children? Look at this. Nearly 25%, somewhere 23, 24%, 1 in 4 children in this nation live in poverty, and they're hungry. They are hungry. This has to be addressed. And the President's jobs program puts men and women back to work so that they can care for their children. There's another story behind this, and that is that the rate of poverty in America is the highest it has been since 1962. During the Johnson period, 63, 4, 5, actually, excuse me, that was the Kennedy period, but in the Johnson period, America started a war on poverty. And the poverty rate in this nation fell precipitously. Senior poverty with Medicare, Medicaid, men and women in their senior years taken out of poverty because they could afford health care. They had health care available to them. And other programs were institutionalized. Here we are, 40-some years later. The highest incident of poverty in America since prior to the war on poverty in the 1960s. We have to address this.
You know, Representative Garamendi, it is often said that a nation can be measured by the work it does for those in their dawn of life. And the quality of life for those children living in poverty, understandably, is reduced. And so the challenge to all of us in this country, what ought to move that moral compass of America, is the reflection on that statement that you just made. If we're content with that statistic, if we're content with the direction in which that statistic is moving, then it is a puzzling statement. It ought to haunt us as a society. And as we weaken and as we grow more and more into the ranks of poverty, the entire nation, all income strata, are challenged by that. We're all weakened by that statistic. Because as we empower each and every American, we as a nation collectively grow stronger. And the impact is not only just living in poverty, it's more incidents of disease, risks to health care, poor education. We need to strengthen the homes, and you don't do it with policies that obviously have created this growing divide. And that gap is growing between the comfortable and uncomfortable, and it's why there has to be this revisitation, if you will, of tax policy. Now, there are those who say, well, if you adjust this, it's class warfare. It's not class warfare if everything were at its even level and you adjusted it, you could call it class warfare. This is an exercise in justice, social and economic justice, and it also can be argued that if we had those higher tax rates and we had an economic a series of years of economic growth in the Clinton years, then how do you rationalize the tax rates having been higher back then? It certainly could be argued that it didn't ward off economic growth, economic strengthening of our nation. So yeah, there is a call here, a clarion call, a wake-up call to visit policy that will undo this social and economic injustice. It hurts all of us, and it can't continue. I know that in the stats that you shared, there's another one, another statistic that is troublesome. We have now dropped below $50,000 as the median household income. I believe we're in the range of $48,000 to $49,000, maybe perhaps just slightly more than $49,000. That is troublesome as that median continues to dip. That is a hurtful acknowledgement that there are failed policies out there that need to be turned around.
Let me put a couple more facts on the table, and then let's talk about the policy changes that can redirect that. This is the last 40 years, 1979 to 2006. 2006, prior to the Great Recession. During that period of time, there was a shift of wealth and of income, from the middle class and the low income to the very wealthy. This lays it out. And again, this is prior to the Great Recession. So if we look at it in the Great Recession, these statistics are even more startling. For the for the poorest, 11% growth. And then you move up the second group, 18%, 21%, 32%. For the top percentage, the top 20%, a 256 increase in income and wealth. You look at a wage earner in a factory versus the CEO. Used to be 1 to 40. Now it's 1 to 300. So we've seen an enormous shift in wealth from the working middle class families to the very, very wealthy. Now, if you overlay this with the 2007, 8, 9 and where we are today in 2011, it would be even more startling because now this is running negative.
Right.
These are running negative. As you said just a moment ago, for the middle class, that's here and down. Not the top 20, not the top 20%, but down here. This is the top 1%.
So pre-recession, we're reading 32% at the best.
At the best.
Anywhere from 11% to 32% growth versus 256% growth for that top 1%, perched at the top of the economic ladder, the income strata.
We use Donald Trump as the example here, but there's probably 400 to 500,000 that fall into this category, extraordinary wealth. Now, we've been talking all night about the American Jobs Act. So I'm going to put this back up for us to ponder for a moment. The American Jobs Act. Total cost. Total cost of the American Jobs Act, $450 million. The President yesterday said it can be paid for. And he laid out a way to pay for it and simultaneously, over the next decade, bring down the American deficit, solve the deficit, and pay for the Jobs Act. And he said that there are 3 ways to do it. First, those who have much must participate. They must share in bringing America back. And so he has suggested that the highest income, that 1%, those who make over $1 million, that they participate, that they no longer will be able to have a tax rate lower than their assistants. That's the Buffett rule. That's a big piece of it, about $800 billion over the next decade. He also said that corporations that pay no income tax today, corporations like General Motors, corporations like Verizon, some of America's biggest corporations pay 0 income tax, and last year General Electric paid 0 and got about $5 billion back in rebates. Something is seriously wrong. The President says that cannot happen anymore. Everybody has to participate. He also said that other tax breaks for the oil companies should end. So putting together these tax increases on those who have much, the super wealthy in America, the hedge fund manager that pays 15% on his income, where you and I and others may pay 30%. Something's wrong here. So that's what he's recommending. We need to move very vigorously forward on the American Jobs Act, put people back to work, and simultaneously solve the overall budget deficit by not only new taxes, but also with additional cuts. That's the President's proposal.
You know, and I would add to that that, you know, the jobs piece is so significant because we can talk about tax reform, but unless you have a job and an income, then it renders itself somewhat meaningless. And I would also add, Representative Garamendi, the concern that as more and more pressure has befallen the 50 states, we've seen cuts to programs and resources, and these services don't go away. And so the payment comes down to the local level with property tax payments that are now snuffing out the American dream for America's working families, for the middle class. So not only is the tax policy suffocating for middle-class Americans, but the counter effect of property taxes growing in order to continue services means that more and more pressure, income tax, property tax pressure, school tax pressure, is befalling the middle class. When people want to walk away from this agenda to make progressive reforms to policy, tax policy, it scares me because this is our moment, our tipping point to turn things around. I know that you want to close. I thank you for the outstanding leadership in bringing us together, Representative Garamendi. It is always a pleasure to join with you. We'll continue to forcefully speak to the reforms we need.
Well, the East-West show will continue, and the Make It in America agenda will be the American agenda because Americans want to make things in this country. They want to rebuild the manufacturing industry. The President has given us a way to do that with the American Jobs Act. Trade policy, tax policy, energy, labor, make it in America. Make the jobs in America, rebuild America's manufacturing base, rebuild the American middle class. We will do it. And if we pass the American Jobs Act, it can happen very quickly. I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields the rest of his time. Gentleman from New York, have a motion? Do you have a motion? The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for morning hour debate.